Another day, another Pokemon Home update with some Origin Dex drama to talk about. I'm so happy. So, it's about 5 days after the announcement of Firered Leafgreen connectivity and the Pokemon Bank Shutdown. We're going to get into this, but I wanted to wait a few days to collect myself and collect my thoughts. There's so much implication with this update. And some of the things I talked about in the last home update, which I guess was the Fire Red and Leaf Green announcement, was the last time I talked about this stuff. Some of that came true, and I have some new insight on some other things, so I want to talk about it. I'm going to only talk about this article today, and I think over the course of the next up to 6 months or so, we'll go into more about what I recommend doing in terms of the shutdown. But for now, let's just get into it. So, on the 13th, which was Tuesday, I believe, Thursday, the 13th of August, 2026, we got an announcement that Fire Red and Leaf Green, which came out on Pokemon Day, which was February 2026, is going to be getting home support in October 2026. So, I have a couple things. First of all, this image here is Fire Red Leaf Green with a one-way directional arrow into Pokemon Home. Let's read it first. So, Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green version are set to link with Pokemon Home in October 2026. You'll be able to bring them to Home and other games of the series. Okay, that's how Pokemon Home works. Once a Pokemon from Fire Red or Leaf Green is brought to another game in this series, they will be unable to return to Fire Red and Leaf Green. Pokemon from other games in the series will be unable to visit Fire Red or Leaf Green. So, what I thought at first, I thought this meant that Pokemon from the Switch 2 version of Fire Red and Leaf Green will be able to enter Pokemon Home and not come back. That's what I understand from the image that they posted, right? But the verbiage they use, once a Pokemon from Fire Red Leaf Green is brought into another game of the series, they will be unable to return. What this leads me to believe is that this is going to be a Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee situation where you can deposit them into Home and bring them back out into Fire Red and Leaf Green, only up until you don't put them into a different game like Shield, for example. So your Charizard from Fire Red goes into Home. It can come back into Fire Red. It can come back into Leaf Green. It can probably come back into Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, which is almost 100% likely to come out. There has been a leak, a rumor. We already pretty much knew. I mean, I guessed that Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald would come out on Switch. We pretty much knew this. It's probably going to happen. But once that Charizard goes into Sword and Shield, once that Charizard goes into Scarlet and Violet, just like how Pikachu Leaf Green work, just like how Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee work, once they go into a different game, they can't go back into Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee. I think it's going to work the same way. And this image is really misleading here because, you know, it took me a while to read, like most Pokemon players. But I think that's how it's going to work. I'm pretty confident. If we are in the right timeline, that's how it's going to work. Now, the next thing is for completing the Dex. Jeez, I don't even know how to address this. So, let's just read it, I guess. I'll scroll back up. You can receive a Celebi by completing the Fire Red and Leaf Green Pokédex. I assume that means the regional Dex, like 1 through 150. It might mean the extended Fire Red Leaf Green Dex, like all 215 or whatever, because there are Johto Pokemon also added into Fire and Leaf Green. It says to complete this, you won't need to transfer Pokemon to Home. You simply have to connect the game, and what I understand by this is when you like open Home and you can select, oh, I need to connect to Violet, I need to connect to Shield, I need to connect to Let's Go Pikachu. Once you connect it, Home reads the save data and knows if you've got the Pokédex registered in Fire Red. So you don't actually have to send any Pokemon into Home for that, which is nice. And don't forget, you can always use the GTS. I think that's That's a good tip that I haven't actually been utilizing. But if we go back up to the Celebi reward that we get, it has a new origin mark. Oh my gosh, you don't understand what this means. Basically, this means that the Switch version of Firered Leafgreen are different than the cartridge version of Firered Leafgreen, because Switch version is going to have a new origin mark, the Game Boy Advance mark, I guess we're going to call it. But original cartridge Firered Leafgreen have a no mark. If you've been watching my previous videos about the Origin Dex and Origin marks, you know that the no mark is simply a blank origin mark, signifying that it comes from Gen 3, 4, or 5. So, cartridge version of Firered has a no mark. Switch version of Firered has a Game Boy Advance mark. Now, this is good and bad. I like this because this gives me a reason to play Firered Leafgreen and presumably Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald on Switch, which I had not had a reason previously to play those because I like the cartridge version better. But the bad thing is, after Pokemon Bank dies, which is going to be happening in February of 2027, 6 months approximately from now, once Pokemon Bank dies, no marks will be forever unobtainable. Except through maybe hacking, but let's just assume without hacking, no marks will be forever unobtainable because you cannot transfer a no mark Firered Charizard to Gen 4, to Gen 5, to Pokemon Bank to be able to put it into Home. Now the question becomes when, and I think it's safe to assume that most Pokemon games mainline will eventually come to the Switch 2 with time, but let's say Gen 1 and 2, Red, Blue, Yellow, Gold, Silver, Crystal come out on the Switch. Will they have the Game Boy mark that they had in the Virtual Console, or will they have a new mark? I think it's safe to assume that Gen 1 and 2 specifically will have probably the original Game Boy mark, to which I, as an Origin mark collector, would consider them the same, but the Switch and cartridge version of Fire Red, one is a no mark, one is a Game Boy Advance mark. I would not consider that to be the same thing. Those are two separate things. Now we're talking about me. You don't necessarily have to do my Origin Dex, of course, and collect no marks and collect Game Boy Advance marks, but that's how I would categorize them. And then the question becomes, let's say Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, Heart Gold, Soul Silver come out. Are they gonna have a DS Origin mark? And then when Black, White 2 come out, are they gonna have a DS Origin mark or a Gen 5 Origin mark? I think by the pattern that's being created, it's safe to assume they would have their own Origin mark. Whether Gen 4 and 5 would be the same or different, I can't say. I assume they'd be different, I think, if I had to guess. But it means that no marks are permanently unobtainable. If they ever do Gen 6 ports, which would be XY, Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, safe to assume that those would still be pentagons, perhaps. And then if Sun, Moon, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon got ports, safe to assume that they would still have the Clover mark. So it's not as big a deal to me for the Game Boy marks, which is Gen 1 and 2, and it's not as big a deal for me for Gen 6 and 7, which is the Pentagons and the Clovers, because they already have Origin marks, so I don't foresee them changing them into new ones. But for Gen 3, 4, and 5, there is now a split of two different Origin marks for the same gen. So your options are to either ignore that fact entirely and not care, or if you do want to go the extra mile, well, now those are the highest priority marks to collect before Bank shuts down, because those are the only ones that are permanently, officially unavailable after Bank shuts down, assuming that the other mainline games eventually get ports and come out, which there's a chance they won't, right? So that is all I think I have to say about the Celebi. That's what I have to say about the new Origin mark. And some things we got right when they announced Fire Red and Leaf Green for the Switch. We assumed and correctly guessed that they would do events. I'm actually very happy that they are doing this. This is very cool. And by the logic of the Celebi having, being able to go back into Fire Red, because the Celebi has the Game Boy Advance Origin mark. This is the Fire Red Leaf Green stamp, which signifies like the last game that it was. So as long as you don't put this Celebi into Scarlet and Violet or Sword and Shield, this Celebi presumably should be able to go backwards into Fire Red. And because Fire Red and Leaf Green has the events available like Lugia, Ho-Oh, Deoxys, I think it's pretty safe to assume at this point that when Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald come out, there will probably be the appropriate events for that game, like probably the Mystery Island Mew. That's not the Faraway Island Mew is what it's called. Another Deoxys event for Emerald, and then probably a giveaway Jirachi for Dex completion, which you could probably port back into Emerald or Fire Red. So this is actually, I'm impressed actually, because you will very likely be able to collect literally all of Gen 3 on your Switch version of Fire Red, Leaf Green, Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, and complete the Dex. I think that's awesome. The one thing we are still missing though is Pokemon Colosseum and Pokemon XD compatibility. So as of right now, Gale of Darkness and Colosseum do not have compatibility with Fire Red, Leaf Green. They probably won't ever get it unless there is some kind of standalone release that happens maybe in the future. But you know what? I can live with this. I'm not like 100% happy with it, but I can live with it because you can get every other mythical and actually complete the Pokédex all like 386 on your Switch. I'm okay with that. You're still not going to be able to get a true RNG Entei, Suicune, Raikou. You're going to have to live with your 0 IV roamer glitch. We've talked about it before. The nice thing is, and this is slightly assumption, but the nice thing is you'll be able to play through Fire Red. Maybe it's your main file. Then maybe you can play through Leaf Green. Maybe you get Suicune in Fire Red. Maybe you get Raikou in Leaf Green. And then you could put the Raikou into Home, start over your Leaf Green, and then get the Entei, and then you got all of the legendary beasts. You can kind of trade with yourself now, which was one of my big complaints with the original Fire Red and Leaf Green announcement, was that how are you going to trade with yourself? You need to have 2 Switches, and then you have to have like buy a game on one Switch, buy a game on one Switch, and trade with yourself. You still can't trade with yourself for trade evolutions, but I can live with that as long as you can put them into Home and take them back out into, like, pull your Fire Red Pokemon into Home, and then pull them back out into Leaf Green, take your Emerald Pokemon into Home, put them into Fire Red. I'm okay with that. I can accept the fact that you need to find a friend in real life to do in-game trades with for trade evolutions. I think that's a fair compromise. So overall, I'm actually very impressed by the announcement of the Fire Red home compatibility. Of course, I'm saddened and disappointed by the lack of connectivity to Colosseum and XD. If they had connectivity, I would almost consider pausing my forever saves and start it over on Switch. I would. But because there is no compatibility with Colosseum and XD, I don't think that's the correct choice to make as a 100% completionist kind of person. But I think the alternative is 99% there, and I'm very impressed by that. I will be making more videos about the bank shutdown. I want to make one specifically about what Pokemon I'm interested in collecting in the short time we have left. I want to make maybe a video about like some shortcuts you can take if you have a modded 3DS to collect these Pokemon faster, save some time transferring, getting them all into home in like a more efficient manner, because depending on where you're at in your collection and what your goals are, you might have a lot to do. I also want to make a video about Ribbon Masters. I don't think I'll get the time to be able to do a true Ribbon Master, but I would still like to do some part of a Ribbon Master. If I don't get all the ribbons, maybe I skip some of the harder ones, just get some ones that I want, and kind of have a play of a journey. And then maybe one day I'll go back on cartridge and do a true Ribbon Master later. I did forget, I guess one topic I wanted to talk about, the bank shutdown. There's only 6 months left. You got 6 months to finish up your transfers. Now let's put this in perspective. Like, 6 months is 180 days, give or take a little bit. We have slightly longer than 6 months. So let's estimate this out. If you have 180 days to finish your transfers, how busy are you? Do you have 1 day, or do you have 1 hour a week? Do you have 10 hours a week? You might have anywhere from 180 hours to 1,000 hours to finish everything you want to accomplish. Personally, in my Origin Dex journey right now, I can show you actually. In my Origin Dex journey, I am very close to finishing what I consider the retro marks, and these are the marks that are going to be deleted, or not deleted, but unobtainable after Pokemon Bank shuts down. So Game Boy marks, I am complete. The No marks, I am very close. The Pentagon marks, I am very close. And the Clover marks, I'm missing about 100. The biggest roadblock I have right now is I need to do 3 Sun and Moon playthroughs. I need to do 1 Sun and Moon, and I need to do Ultra Sun, and I need to do Ultra Moon, because I don't have any of the legendaries, and I need all of the trades. I have some work to do. I think it's possible. My stretch goal would be to get like all the trade lines. For example, if you trade Kenya the Spearow, I would want to go back and get a second one to make one a Fearow, and so on for all the trades. That would be like a stretch goal I would have. But overall, for my 6 months until Bank Shutdown, my priority is to finish the retro sections of my Origin Dex. And then if I have any time left, I would maybe consider doing a part Ribbon Master, probably not a true Ribbon Master. And then I would probably go back and get the trade lines. And then one more thing I would do is just collect interesting Pokemon that I like, and I'll go into that in a future video. The one example I'll give you is, Scythers. I would go back and I would collect Scythers from all the Origin marks, maybe like 2 of each Origin mark, and just have them extra. What if one day Scyther gets another evolution? I think it would be so cool if in Gen 12, Scyther gets another Cleaver evolves, or Scyther evolves into a third state, and then you could say that you have a Game Boy mark of Super Scyther or whatever, because you saved those Pokemon to bring into future gens, and you gambled and you predicted, and you got like a prediction right, and now you have an old Origin mark for a new Pokemon. And also not like, maybe you have one Scyther in home that's a Game Boy mark. Do you want to take that one and evolve it and no longer have a Game Boy mark Scyther? Hope you're seeing what I'm laying down there. I think that's another thing that's worthwhile to do before Bank shuts down. Don't overwhelm yourself, though. If this is stressing you out, don't worry about it. Like, it's just a game at the end of the day, but at the same time, maybe this is your chance to just dive fully into Pokemon and put like your 110% effort into completing as many goals as you can. Like, I don't know how crazy you are, but if you've never heard of the Origin Dex before at all, and you want to start today by collecting every possible Origin mark of every possible Pokemon, if you finish that in 6 months, how freaking cool would you feel? I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. I think you gotta really like put this to your energy level and your time commitment and your time freedom. How much time do you have? How much time are you willing to put in? Is the time limit gonna stress you out, or is the time limit gonna push you to be better? You know, I would not want to be me right now. Like having to play through, literally, like if I had to play through Gen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in 6 months, I wouldn't be able to do that. Maybe you want to. So that is, I think, everything I wanted to talk about. I probably talked a little longer than I wanted to originally, but I think we had some good conversation there and some good topics. Like I said, more videos will be coming out soon related to all these topics a little bit here and there. I will try to continue to document my Origin Dex journey and hopefully be able to help. I do want to say one more thing. If you would like to join our Discord channel that we have, I don't know how many of you will want to participate in this, but I made a room basically for our Discord that's talking about Bank Shutdown. And if you have any questions, I'll leave a Discord link in the bottom. This is just my kind of personal gamer friends chill Discord. We talk about video games, not necessarily Pokemon, and we share the cards we get from Pocket and TCG, and we talk about just like anime figures and Gundams and whatever you're into. So I'm gonna leave that. I don't often leave the Discord link, but I think I'll leave it this time if you want to have some conversation, and I would love to help you with your Origin Dex journey if you have any questions or need help. No promises, but maybe I could assist you. Like, if you could send me a save file, I could help you rescue a Pokemon or something like that. No commitments, no hard commitments to that, but it would be something I would consider. So leave some comments below. What are your goals in the next 6 months? What are you trying to get done before Bank shuts down? I'm very curious to know how you feel about it. I don't think we're happy about it, but I'm not totally unhappy about it, if that makes sense, and I hope I've expressed that. There's more to come from the Origin Dex. Not a whole lot more, but there are more. And of course, after Bank shuts down, I'll need to finish the other, like, 10 games worth of Origin marks that are post-Bank shutdown, so there'll be more to come for that. Take care. I'll see you on the next one.